r/NoSleep. Posted by u/Emil6. A tiny door appeared in my attic and now strange things are starting to happen. Part 2. I posted on here a few days ago about some strange things that have been happening in my new home. Things seem to be getting worse, so I'll continue where I left off and hope anyone has some insight into what is happening. Sleeping didn't go well that night I last posted. Tossing and turning, jumping at every little sound the house made. I didn't remember my dreams, which is odd for me, but does happen on occasion. To my relief, there didn't seem to be any new spirals on my skin. I did notice a couple of welt-like marks, but chalked it up to the way some of the spirals might be healing. My cut finger was throbbing, so I cleaned and rebandaged it before heading downstairs. Might have to get it looked at by a doctor if it doesn't start to heal. Deciding that I needed to get out of the house, I ran a couple of errands and visited my parents. Then I met David for lunch. He was the only person I felt I could tell this stuff to. It was all just too strange. He was as perplexed as I was. He promised to come over on the weekend to take a look at the door in person, when my kids would be at their dad's. I had been cooped up in the house working on it for so long, that it must have been making me stir crazy. Getting out and talking with David seemed to work wonders on my psyche. I ordered pizza for dinner, the kids and I watched a movie, then we all headed to bed. I wish I could say that I had a restful sleep that night, but that would be far from the truth. My dream was even worse than that of the fairies. Tied up to a table, I was sprawled out, unable to move. Above me was the head of a dead goat, its mouth open and tongue hanging out the side. Its dead eyes seemed to be staring into mine. Blood dripped from its severed neck onto my thighs. Tears welled in my eyes at the sight. WTF? I frantically tried freeing myself, but the ropes were too tight. Looking around the room, I tried to assess where I was. It reminded me of some kind of medieval dungeon. Walls of gray stone lined with lit torches surrounded me. There wasn't a door in sight. How did I get there without a door? It's as if I was teleported there from my bedroom. Now, I say it was a dream, but the realness of it was uncanny. I could smell the dampness of the dungeon, the rotting of the goat head. Feel the dryness in my throat, the pit in my stomach, and the tears welling in my eyes. Everything. I don't know how, but I was there. When my tears started spilling down the sides of my face, I noticed something black moving inside the goat's mouth. It was slowly inching down the tongue. Black, slimy, and somewhat flat, it looked like a leech. Now at the end of the tongue, it lifted the top half of its body up, revealing a round hole of a mouth with hundreds of tiny teeth. It reminded me of a lamprey. I gasped and shivered in fear, goosebumps covering my arms and legs. The harnesses tying my wrists and ankles down were still too tight for my desperate urge to escape. The leech slid off the end of the goat tongue and onto my abdomen. It slunk up to the top of my chest. I could feel its slimy body on my skin. Goosebumps ignited my body again. Two little arms came out from its sides and poked into my skin. It seemed to be securing itself, before boring its tooth-filled sucking hole into my chest. The pain wasn't as bad as I imagined it would be, it was more the horror of what was happening and that I couldn't stop it. Screaming and crying out for help just made me realize how alone I was. Other than my pleas for help, silence. Utter silence. As the leech's body started to inflate, more movement from the direction of the goat head caught my attention. There were more of them. Dropping one by one onto my body from the goat head, they all took their own spot where there was open skin. I lost count after 8 and closed my eyes so I didn't have to watch. Their slimy bodies slithering all over mine, piercing pains everywhere. My body started to feel weak, from all the blood being sucked out of it. Trying to convince myself this was still a dream and that I needed to wake up, I did everything I could to will myself awake. But every time I opened my eyes again, I was still being devoured by big, black, slimy leeches. Finally, after what felt like hours, I suddenly woke up back in bed. Jumping up frantically, I started swiping at my body, but there were no leeches in sight. Welts covered my body, but not just any welts. A ring of dots resembling the teeth of the leeches, with a circle resembling a bee sting in the center. Even my neck had some spots. I had to wear a long-sleeved turtleneck and pants to make sure I could hide them all. Luckily, none were on my face, although, I'm not sure how lucky I feel right now. I'm so scared to go to sleep tonight. The terror I feel about going to bed and waking up in some other random, scary place is just too much. But I can't just never sleep again. So Reddit, does anyone know what I could be dealing with here? Has anyone experienced dreams like this? Or rather being transported somewhere at night? Any more insight into what these doors are? I'm so scared and appreciate any help you can give me. The next story of this video. Posted by u/fisherman Tales. It drinks from the river. I'm unsure what exactly it is I've seen drinking from the river. At first, she seemed a woman. Hair like long, dark silk running down her bare back. Skin pale as the moon above her. She knelt and cupped her hands and dipped them into the frigid water, then brought them to her mouth. It was odd to see this scene at such a late hour, but even more so in such bitter weather. White powder layered atop the land. Snowflakes flurrying above. Yet, despite the temperature, she did not shiver. She did not show any hint of discomfort. I stood silent inside my unlit log cabin, eyeing her from behind the icy glass, unsure as to the proper response to such a sight. Should I hurry out to her and lead her to warmth? Or should I continue to quietly observe? Perhaps I am cowardly, seeing as I chose the latter. A beautiful woman, nude and near, kneeling by the river at the dead of night. It would have been tempting to see if this fantasy could be brought further into fruition, had I not feared the consequences of approaching her. Drugs, I mumbled. It must be drugs. Not that I am an expert, but I've seen the news. How inconvenient it would have been to hurry from the cabin with blankets in hand, only to have my face gnawed off by a beautiful stranger tripping on bath salts. No, I'd rather her freeze and then I read the toxicology report online. Furthermore, where had she come from? It would have been a hike and a half on foot from the nearest house. Hardly doable stark naked in the thick of winter. It was as if she were plopped down from above or had just simply appeared. Perhaps I was the one who was high, I began to ponder. Would I soon die from carbon monoxide poisoning? Or is it dioxide? Did it matter? Not in that moment. Cracking a window seemed out of the question, regardless. As did going outside. She remained at the river for some time, and it soon became clear that she was remarkably resilient. Appearing cozier unclothed in the snow than I was bundled in layers indoors. But what came next was the truest test of her durability. A blizzard. It swept in suddenly and swallowed her into impenetrable whiteness, leaving me with a lasting image of a woman detached. Unfazed by the harsh and harrowing conditions. Damn, I said. I wish I saw her front side. A cold sentiment about a woman who was not cold. But she was so strange I couldn't help but lack sympathy for her. I only hoped that I wouldn't find her as an icicle the following morning. For my sake as much as hers. The heavy winds whistled against the wooden walls, whipping the windows and door. A colorless storm shrouded the world outside. I was going to call it a night. Until something moved close by. A figure faintly revealed in the stutter of the squall, sauntering toward my window. In the conversing warmth of the cabin, I froze. It was her. Serene through it all. She stepped to the glass and her face finally became clear. A mouth and no more. A cavern in flesh. Tongue peeking over bony stalagmites like a serpentine beast within. She cocked her head, seemingly studying me in some way. With the subsiding snowfall, she left and returned to the river and then submerged herself into its glacial current. She rides the river, it seems, and where she goes, I do not know. I do not plan to look. Maybe she even swam upstream or entered a hole in the riverbed. Maybe she climbed out elsewhere. Or maybe she is once again kneeling on a riverbank, cupping water into her mouth.